Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for those in different continents. We welcome you to ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform webinar series. Today, our webinar number 3, the role of tourism in advancing food sustainability in ASEAN through circular practices. Before we start, I'd like to go over some housekeeping rules of our webinar. First of all, I would like to kindly ask all participants to keep your microphone mute so that we don't have the session interrupted. The webinar will also be recorded, and the recording will be available for all participants and speakers after the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat box, and our moderator will address your question either during the panel discussion or after the panel discussion in the Q&A session. And if you have any question, feel free to send us an email or drop the question into the chat box as well. Now, to not delay our event, first, I'd like to introduce our chairs of the webinar, Dr. Anthony Prabhuanlat, or Dr. Tony, and Kun David or Kun Trivisud Ariyawat, to give a welcome note to our webinar. Please welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to today's webinar series on tourism and food sustainability through circular economy practices. I'm very excited today to open this discussion on this issue, as I think the tourism industry is or should be at the forefront of promoting and practicing sustainable consumption and production. Looking at the background of this webinar series, I think what the tourism industry has to offer to all stakeholders in sustainable consumption and production are these key points that have been alluded to in our opening concept note. Cultural exchange, local traditions, cultural heritage, traditional practices, including community resilience. I think these issues are essential as we strive towards sustainable consumption and production. I think this is a particular advantage that the tourism industry has that can spearhead, our work and our path towards sustainable consumption and production within ASEAN countries. So with these opening remarks, I'd like to welcome you all to this series, and I look forward to very fruitful discussions. Thank you.
And David, would you like some words to introduce the platform?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Anthony, for your word of wisdom, and Dr. Sirasa. Before sharing about the platform, I want to express my humble gratitude to all speakers, moderator, contributors, and participants in this webinar. Most importantly, I would like to thank you, Switch Asia team, support in making this webinar happen and everyone behind the scene. And I look forward to learning about how tourism can be a catalyst for transforming food system towards sustainability and circularity while fostering community resilience and inclusivity in the context of ASEAN and beyond. Our platform, the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, was established as a regional facility to help ASEAN member states achieve sustainable consumption and production by accelerating a transition to a circular economy. It is a part of the ongoing ASEAN-EU Partnership on Circular Economy since 2019. And the establishment of our platform was inspired by the success of European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, and by learning from the EU platform and other regional initiatives. Our mission is to support the ASEAN transition to a circular economy by providing access to good practices, strategy, to a knowledge and information portal. We facilitate stakeholder engagement and organizing annual conference with diverse participation. And on this occasion, I encourage you to engage with our platform or web portal to learn from diverse knowledge, news, events, share story, good practices, and business case, and engage in meaningful activities such as this webinar. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Over to you, Dr. Sirasa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tony and David. Next, our first introduction session. I'd like to welcome Ms. Lorraine Galabayan, the key expert on SCP awareness, raising and regional partnership building at the Switch Asia Policy Support Component, for her session presenting Revolutionizing the Food and Tourism Sector, Insight from the EU Switch Asia Program. Please welcome Ms. Lorraine to the floor.
Thank you, Sirasa. I hope you can hear me clearly. So I will be first presenting an overview on the role of tourism in advancing food sustainability in ASEAN through circular practices. So, today, the tourism industry has proven to be diverse, crisis-tested, resilient, and innovative, bringing its feedback after the pandemic, and tourism is now moving back again on track to recovery to pre-pandemic levels. So this is the right timing, having an opportune time to bring it closer to sustainability. So tourism is a multi and cross-sectoral sector, which is well positioned to promote sustainable consumption and production and circular economy, which also helps advance food sustainability. And this has started to be recognized in the global political agenda. Next slide, please. So first, I will provide an overview on sustainable consumption and production, or SCP, and circular economy, and how it contributes to food circularity so we can level off and be reminded of its importance. So SCP aims to minimize the negative environmental impacts from consumption and production systems, and it considers all stages in the life cycle of products and services, including in tourism, while promoting quality of life and well-being. So SCP looks at the entire value chain, also in the tourism value chain, looking at drivers and barriers to sustainability in the production and consumption processes. It is important to green the supply chain from the production side through SCP, and it's also an opportunity on shaping markets, market demand, and the environmental impacts of consumption. So SCP is very much linked to circular economy as it focuses on resource efficient use and also reduction of waste generation through the production, distribution, transportation, and consumption processes. So this approach shifts the model of production and consumption, highlighting extension of a life cycle of products. And if we talk about circular economy, it involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, recycling existing materials and products as long as possible to create further value on the products and services. So tourism has a role to play in advancing sustainable food systems through the application of SCP and circular economy approaches by focusing on reducing resource use, preventing food loss and waste, and redistribution of organic resources, such as those from food byproducts in the tourism value chain. Next, please. Next slide. So here you see the tourism value creation system, and it shows that the tourism sector is composed of a wide range of businesses, from small local operations that serve as a single local market to very large transport, hotel, and tour operator companies that serve global markets across regions, and which sells or facilitate a number of tour packages to foreign destinations. So the tourism industry provides tourists with products and services such as accommodations, transport, food and drink, attractions to visit, and souvenirs and other products. So looking at the sector, elaborating on the supply chain and multi-stakeholder networks involved in it, these can be used to systematically encourage adoption of the life cycle approach in tourism, design, and operations, but through promotion of the shift towards SCP and circularity approaches. So greening the tourism sector through SCP and CE It reduced greenhouse gas emission, it reduced water usage, energy use, improved solid waste management, implementing sustainable management of natural resources, and reducing the ecological footprint of the value chain. So this is how SCP and CE approach provides the benefits towards greening tourism. Next slide, please. So now looking at the nexus of food and tourism, food is an important element in the tourism sector as it's a tourism experience. So food is a precious resource. And the way that food is handled has significant economic, social, and environmental impacts for both the tourist destinations and the businesses. So overuse of scarce resources, excessive food waste, and poor working conditions are some examples of tourist food consumption having negative consequences for a destination. So looking at the value chain in relation to food and tourism, as shown in the graph, it shows that tourism has an influence on the way food is produced and consumed, which could contribute to food loss and food waste, and also on contribution to environmental impact. So tackling food loss and waste is one of the concrete actions needed to transform food systems in the tourism sector. And here in the middle stage of the food value chain, there is potential to shape both what farmers produce and sell and what consumers buy and eat. So most policy measures could address either primary production or individual consumption stages, and there's opportunity to work on policies to address the middle stages of the value chain. So in that case, by looking at the food waste reduction and food loss, it's therefore a key element in advancing a transition towards more sustainable food management and tourism, including the integration of circular processes. Next slide, please. So in the global arena, there has been much discussion on food in national tourism policies. There was an UN World Tourism Organization review of national tourism policies from 114 destinations, and this was conducted in 2022. And it showed that major tourism policies mentioned food as a strategy related to the competitiveness of destinations with potential to attract visitors and benefit the local economy. In contrast, though, the studies show that these policies seldom include references to sustainable management of food across the different stages of the tourism value chain, namely procurement, preparation of menus, consumption, and waste. So this study showed the opportunity for tourism policymakers to expand the focus on food beyond the competitiveness approach linked to gastronomy, but also towards sustainable food management. And also, there's a UNWTO published, the UNWTO also published the global roadmap for food waste reduction in the tourism sector. It was published last year, and it looks at how tourism stakeholders could accelerate the uptake of food waste reduction strategies using SCP and CE approaches towards sustainable and circular management of food, with emphasis to reducing food waste, and also to help move towards cost-effective and environmentally responsible strategy. Next slide, please. In the ASEAN sub-region, tourism is recognized as an important driver for economic development, and it requires ASEAN cooperation to foster regional integration. And the ASEAN has responded to the global trend, addressing the need to address our environmental footprint and looking at objectives to transform the tourism sector. And the ASEAN Tourism Strategic Plan 2006 to 2025 respond to this, as well as the ASEAN SCP framework, the ASEAN Circular Economy Action Plan as well. And it showed the importance role of ensuring sustainability, inclusiveness, and resiliency. And in the updated ASEAN Tourism Strategic Plan, it was updated in 2021. It highlighted new programs to develop SCP policies and practices, including greening the tourism value chain and promoting sustainable and responsible tourism development in ASEAN. So this can be an entry point to further expand towards policies on using circularity approaches in addressing food waste and loss. So next slide, please. So in terms of, this is my last slide, just to emphasize the importance of the systems thinking approach. It is needed to move towards circular food systems in the tourism sector. As there are already ASEAN policies in place, there's an opportunity to enhance the sustainability standards and encourage more multi-stakeholder collaboration and involving the different tourism actors and stakeholders. And it will be especially interesting to hear from the panel as they share their specific initiative practices and approaches being implemented in the countries on the ground. And just key areas of intervention that we're looking at in bringing in circular food systems in the tourism sector. This involves food waste prevention at different stages in the food production, processing, distribution, consumption, and waste processes, involving producers and consumers in the tourism value chain. It also involves promotion of food waste recovery and reuse, potentially closing the loop resource flow for biological materials to be used for compost or fertilizer, reduction of food loss or food surplus, and the edible discarded food that is not consumed by consumers. And then also look at the possibility of promoting innovative business models that offer tourists local food products, and looking at minimizing the ecological footprint, and also promoting business action concerning food packaging, and also having more circular business methods. And of all these interventions, there's a need for innovations and enablers. These are important towards the transformation of circular models in the tourism sector. And innovations in product and services are needed to help circularize materials and resource use. And this can be done through resource efficiency, resource substitution, and resource circularity. So on this, just final notice, the uptake of SCP and circular economy strategies requires enablers, requires collaboration, and also enhancement of policies, so that it also needs development of markets and education and capacity building, and everyone has a role to play to make it happen. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion later.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lorraine, for the wonderful introduction leading us into our panel discussion. Now, our first panel discussion, tourism as a catalyst for food circularity. I'd like to welcome our moderator, Dr. Sinaida Fariva, our team leader at Switch Asia Policy Component. And joining her, we have Ms. Aline van der Meulen, Travel Live Project Coordinator and for Sustour Laos Project, and Ms. Rubina Srikareja, Senior Manager Operations at Lightbrew Environmental Consulting. Lastly, we have Dr. Jutama Wisansi, Managing Director and Consultant at Perfect Link Consulting Group and Executive Committee at Pacific Asia Travel Association of PATA, Thailand chapter, and the founder of Thailand Gastronomy Network. Please welcome our moderator and our panelists to the floor.
Thank you very much, Sirasa. Thank you very much, Lorraine. As colleagues already have mentioned, this webinar is prepared in collaboration between Circular Economy Platform for ASEAN and Switch Asia. And therefore, quite a lot of colleagues which are with us today, attending to all of us with their knowledge, are connected one way or another with Switch Asia. So for that, probably it is merited to say a couple of words about Switch Asia, but also it would explain to us the composition and logic behind two platforms. Tourism topic in Switch Asia is addressed through multiple initiatives and experiences in many countries. So currently, Switch Asia covers 42 countries across Asia, Pacific, and the Middle East. And this work has been done as a technical advisory from the side of the European Union since 2007. So there are two main components which constitute Switch Asia. One of them is related to the grant projects. It is really about SMEs and consumer organizations working on modeling different activities related to sustainable consumption and production on the ground. You could see here the main objectives, geographical coverage and economic sectors which are prioritized within the country. So policy support component, on the other hand, is the set of enabling actions which Lorraine has been just noting as absolutely necessary to bring those innovative experimental activities to broader uptake so that they become mainstream within the sectors and within the countries. So again, we are talking about policy support and grant projects. At this moment, we are dealing with 33 grant projects. And if colleagues move to the next slide, please. It allows us to see that since 2007, at the beginning of the Switch Asia operation, EU supported 16 grants in the tourist sector, and quite a few of them were directly working with issues of food. 5 out of the 16 projects are working in ASEAN, and overall for the whole Asia and the Pacific, there are 6 ongoing projects as of now. You could see here a quick overview of the focal areas for those tourism projects. So 2 of them are operational in Lao PDR. One of them is working more with SMEs and with consumer awareness. Another is more focusing on the destination development. And 2 of them are working in Thailand. One of them is focusing on the issue of supply chain with focus on the policy measures, certification, and another one which works with Thailand and Philippines as zero carbon resorts are really bringing issue of sustainable consumption and production and climate change together, focusing quite a lot of independent and reliable energies and sustainable energy solutions. So which brings issue of material use and low carbon development together. So today we will deal with 2 sets of topics. One set of topic will work with experiences from the tourist sector with focus on food, remembering that it's exactly recognized within our webinar today that tourism is an incredibly powerful actor to influence transformation of food system towards more circular and low carbon food systems. And that is the first panel with which we are dealing. And second one would focus more on the instruments of upscaling, enabling these practices to be taken by much broader. So that brings us back to our panel, which Sirasa, thank you very much for introducing before, where colleagues are working really hands-on with their partners on the ground to pilot, to experiment with activities which would make food, which is an enormously big component within tourism and hospitality sector, towards more circular and sustainable. And let me start, Eileen, with you and ask you, provided that, of course, well, when we speak about food sector, we speak about food across the whole supply chain of tourism. We are looking at food production, transportation, packaging, and consumption within the sector. Could you share with us how businesses contribute to food circularity across value chain? You're muted, Aline. Aline, you're muted, please.
Oops. Yeah, thank you very much, Sinaida, for the introduction. And viewers all, thank you very much for joining us today. Currently, in my position as a project coordinator for TravelLife in the Switch Asia SASTO program in Laos, I work with Lao hotels in order to get them eventually TravelLife certified. So let me share some good practices from the hotel industry in Laos. Most hotels have fresh delivery of vegetables and fruits every day. And if the hotel has enough space, they even grow their own vegetables and fruits. So you see that Lao hotels are aware also of the fact that most tourists favor authentic food adventures. And Laos was very lucky to have the late famous chef Anthony Bourdain revealing secrets of Lao cuisine in several of his TV shows. So many of the Lao hotels offer Lao dishes or even regional dishes of Luang Prabang, for example, on their menu. So in order to avoid food waste, most hotels in Laos have implemented very easy measures, very easy to implement measures like FIFO. I think everybody is familiar with that. First in, first out, portion control, and monitoring food waste that gets spoiled before preparation. Besides that, most of the hotels especially in Luang Prabang, a city where that receives the most of the tourists, most of the food waste is used as compost, and it is given to staff members of the hotel to feed, for example, their chickens, or it is used as compost for their vegetable garden. It's very rare in Laos to see that food waste ends up at landfill. Yeah, lots of measures needs to be taken. We especially need to have a look at waste segregation, where it mostly gets wrong in the hotel business. And this is also what I heard from the Lao hoteliers, that this is quite challenging. So even food waste is reused again, as I just explained. A thing most hoteliers deal with is the fact that waste is not segregated well. As you can imagine, the hotel business is very, very busy, and people tend to make, of course, mistakes when they are busy. So the worst thing that can happen in this whole good practice is that a staff is contaminating, for example, food waste with plastic. So then the food waste becomes not usable anymore. So yeah, this is a bit what happens in Laos. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Aline. And what is quite interesting is the extent to which these practices are really dependent on people's understanding, appreciation of the conditions for circularity of food sector. So how it's people driven, and we know that tourism is always people driven and for people. And another interesting thing is, of course, what you highlighted. It's not only about minimization of waste, about circularity of waste, but it's also about promotion of the local traditions and local food culture. Exciting, interesting. I'm sure quite a lot of our viewers can relate to that. And clearly that quite a lot of innovations, either business innovation or technical innovations, are coming through this practice. And let I just throw this ball of innovation, Rubina, to you and ask you, in your perspective and your experience, how can circular tourism practices drive innovation within the agri-food sector to promote circularity, and by doing so, cut off waste generation?
Hello everyone, lovely to meet you all. Yes, absolutely. So at Light Blue, our main focus is food waste prevention, reducing food waste before we even get to the management side. And through our work with the hospitality sector, we have found that there is a growing demand from consumer level, as well as industry professionals and corporate level, to include sustainable practices into the current policies and standard of operations within the businesses. With that comes a trickle-down effect, leading the hotels, restaurants, the businesses to then demand and request their suppliers for innovative solutions relating to food and the waste attached to it. And this is what happened with us as well, where we believe that monitoring the existing food waste allows the business to know the impact of the changes they have implemented, to tangibly review their progress. They can't manage what they don't measure. So with the growing demand for managing food waste globally, Light Blue had to very quickly transform our knowledge about food waste and the manual systems that we were using into innovative solutions so that it could be widespread. Our FIT, Food Intel Tech, is an example of such a solution. In a nutshell, the Food Intel Tech is a combination of an app and a software dashboard that allows our clients to track their food waste reduction data and address the challenges accordingly. So they look at where, when, why, and how much waste is being accumulated. And once they start noticing the trends, we provide them with recommendations as best practices, as Aline was saying, based on their challenges. The concept of FIT is to make it as accessible as possible for a diverse set of companies. We want sustainability to be accessible to all sizes of businesses. We do this by ensuring that FIT is compatible with generic devices found worldwide, ensuring that the system can cover multiple reporting points within their business without having to acquire any new hardware. So without having to increase their carbon footprint. So I think the circularity aspect is not just what you do with the waste, but also how you can prevent it and how you can prevent your carbon footprint while adopting new innovations. So we believe that, so this allows our solution to be easily integrated into multiple operating systems and sizes. And an example of corporate level demand is the Hyatt Group in the APAC region. They have made it a requirement for all of their hotels to incorporate a food waste monitoring system, one of which is FIT. And in the course of 2023, we onboarded over 50 of their hotels, and together we saw over 600 kilos worth of food rescued. This is incredible. And this doesn't just come from thin air, it comes from consumer demand. So the case study shows that there is a growing demand from the consumer level as well as the retail level for circular tourism practices, which means that our existing and new innovations need to quickly adapt to this ever-changing landscape of sustainability in the hospitality industry. Thank you.
Inaida, you're on mute.
Sorry, yes, I thought I was stuck.
Apology. Rubina, can I ask you just for half a minute reflection? So we do know that Light Blue is becoming rather influential within the hospitality sector in terms of reduction of the food waste, but you also use the standards, right, of food practices. So can you comment a little bit on that as well? Recognition standards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how it's working for you?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. We have the pledge on, we're a partner with the pledge on food waste. And I was actually going to bring that up in the next question, but would you like me to go ahead and speak about it now?
Yes, please. Very, very quickly, please, about that. Thank you.
Okay. So the pledge on food waste is wholly focused on food waste prevention. However, it's a more holistic approach. It involves the whole team within the restaurant or hotel business. We don't just put the pressure of food waste prevention on the kitchen and the F&B team, but we actually involve the marketing team, the HR team, top management, finance, because we believe that there is a role for every department in this process, because everyone brings in a different perspective. And with that, we have, it is designed by embedding best practices that we've identified through our learnings in the past into a set of criteria to create a uniformed process for the industry.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rubina. So we now touched the role of the consumers and organizations in influencing circularity of food systems through tourism. Now, one extremely serious partner in the whole story of tourism and, of course, story of food is communities. So, and with this, may I just turn, Jen, to you and ask you how circular food-focused practices of tourism can influence equality, equity, and resilience of the communities, because after all, communities are very serious part of the whole concept of destination, but also part of the tourism supply chain.
Thank you, thank you. I think what Elaine and Rubina was, they were sharing a lot of interesting initiatives, and everything is boiled down to how we make that great impact to the communities and the destinations itself. I think that's one of the key kind of end game of the whole circularity practices. And to me, I think when we start looking at the whole system and looking at the community as a key player in the whole supply chain and in the whole strategies and initiatives, perhaps the best way is that for me to give an example of how I created a community, a network of Thailand Gastronomy Network, where we're trying to understand the connectivities of the whole players within the totalities of the system. So what we are doing at the moment is considering the communities as a key players within the whole gastronomy design, meaning when you are as a tourist coming to a destination, you should be able to understand and appreciate and advocate what local communities are actually appreciating. The local communities, the culture, the well-being of communities, I think all those are the key to circularity. So in that formula, we are actually creating what we call 4 pillars to make sure that we can then have the community resilience. Because when you talk about circularity, you can't really avoid thinking about the creativity. Innovation is part of it, but being innovative means you need to really make all the complexity within the supply chain system simpler for everyone to be able to take their contribution and participate in the whole thing. So our 4 pillars, perhaps it could be a good case examples for others that actually moving forward this sustainability movement through food as well. The first pillar is we are advocating the organic farming system, meaning when community, and you can understand, I'm sure like Elaine works in Laos, majority of farmers, the community is basically farmers. So they play significant parts when we are really promoting those farmers, those producers who are playing such a significant part to the circularity. So the first pillar is very much on promoting, advocating farmers, producers who are small, medium size, but then they have to compete within these complex systems as well. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is very much creating the story of heritage. And people will just say, what is got to do with circularity when you talk about story of food? people are appreciating the regenerative. We live with nature, we have way of life. Communities are very much being part of that nature for very, very, very long time. They eat seasonal food, they don't really try to change nature, but they adapt their life with nature. So I think when we talk about story of food, we are appreciating how communities live traditionally with nature. So I think that how we not just only talking about communities as just only those who will be the receiving that impact, but they must be part of the people who move this forward as well. So then communities are experts to me. So that's why the second pillar is very much about appreciating the traditions, appreciating how communities practices their circularity for very, very long time. The third pillar is about creative industries. I think what we are doing, we need to communicate. We need to be able to have those advocacy with what we call gastro diplomacy, for example. Communities need to speak up how they like to see their community, how they like to see the future of their community, and they can speak that up to their food heritage. So that's really another important example that what we're doing. And obviously the last pillar is sustainable destination. We have standards. We have Light Blue is doing on food waste, but then food waste is not just only thinking about how we're managing food, but we have to also think about waste could become a great resource. Waste could become energy. Waste is actually valuable. So that is, again, creativity is coming in to play within this circularity. So waste is not just only waste that we have to get rid of it, but waste is actually money as well. So I think that's the key to how community can then be more resilient, can then be, part of the whole process. So they're not just an object of how we're doing as an expert and then say, hey, this is community who have an impact upon all this, but they need to be the key player that how we will see the whole system. So when you talk about resilience and equity, I think that's how our mindset who work with food and the system should really see the community as being significant part of the whole initiatives. So that would be my to start with. I think there's a lot to advocate as well. So my 4 pillars, I'm sure, will open up a lot of ideas for everyone who in the room. Okay.
Jan, Rubin, Aline really are drawing for us extremely rich system of transition towards innovative and forward-looking, as you mentioned, a system of moving forward and transforming food systems and tourism and hospitality sector itself. So we didn't even open the discussion, colleagues, about some other aspects of tourism and food and circularity related to issues of packaging, of transportation of food, etc. So all of these are different layers where influence can be there. But again, it is just the beginning of a discussion. And we've heard from Rubina and Jan and Aline, who are working on the ground, facilitating this, not only innovations now, but also visions for the future. And it's a very logical point now to put the virtual microphone to the next panel, which will be talking about the policies and other enabling factors which could bring these innovations more or less local or more or less regional to the broader uptake. And from my side, what is left is to thank very much you 3 of you and wish that this conversation will be continuing post this airtime. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
And over to you, Elodie. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zenaida. And Sirasa, would you like to introduce the second panel?
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you very much, Sinaida, for your wonderful and informative panel discussion. Next, our second panel discussion is titled Transforming ASEAN Tourism Sector Through Policy Measure for Circularity in the Agri-Food Industry. And as we see on standby already, our moderator, Ms. Elodie Muriesu, our key expert on the EU policy development and partnership building at the Switch Asia Policy Support Component. Joining her on the spotlight, our three panelists are Ms. Imelda Bakudo, COP28 Senior Advisor at the Food and Agriculture Organization, and Mr. C.B. Ram Kumar, the Vice Chair of Global Sustainable Tourism Council. And lastly, we have Ms. Fernanda Rodak, the Sustainability and Social Responsibility Manager at Pacific Asia Travel Association, or PATA. Please welcome everyone to the floor.
Thank you so much, Shirasa, for this introduction and to start this talk that will have more at a policy level with speakers who both have a tourism background and also a food background. So I'm coming in from both angles. And maybe to set the scene, I will ask Ram. So I'll call you all by your first names if you don't mind.
Sure.
I will ask Ram if he could give us some examples of policy measures that have supported circular practices in the hospitality, the tourism sector, especially with regards to food practices.
Yeah, sure. So just a quick background for people who are listening. I'm from the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. The GSTC was formed by the United Nations system, UNEP, UNWTO, UN Foundation, way back in 2007, particularly to create sustainable tourism standards for the planet. Now, why was it done? Because tourism tends to consume resources which are disproportionate to the value it adds back to economies. One of the examples quoted by UNEP is typically a guest in a resort uses 7 to 9 times more water than people residing in the local area. Similarly, when it comes to food, the food waste that is generated by guests in a hotel is tremendous. So for all these reasons, the GSTC was formed and the standards were created. Now, when it comes to policy, all policies that governments form depend on frameworks, because policies are not something you pluck out of thin air. Expecting government regulators or legislators or elected ministers of governments to decide on policy in isolation is asking for too much, because every country and all legislators and elected representatives in countries have their own priorities as far as countries are concerned. Now, to bring the spotlight on tourism, they need help, which means all policy regulators need frameworks to base their policies on, which is where the GSTC standards that were developed, like I said, way back in 2008, 2009, which are updated every few years. Governments are using this for their policy framework. Why are they doing that? Only because everybody wants a uniform framework to follow around the world. You don't want a situation where, UK follows one standard, Fiji follows another standard, India follows a third standard. That has been the challenge in tourism, right? We need a unification, which is the reason why, the United Nations system came together, followed and formed GSTC. So the frameworks that GSTC is put out is what is being used by governments now to draw their policy. Because like I said, you need a framework for policies. It's not out of thin air. Now, within the GSTC standards that have been formed for hotels, tour operators, of course, we have standards for destinations and other aspects of tourism also. But since the discussion is food and hotels, so there are 4 of our standards that refer to food as such, which policymakers use. 2 of them have to do with social aspects of food. 2 of them have to do with environmental aspects of food. So the 2 of them that refer to the social aspects, we talk about, local purchasing, encouraging local entrepreneurship, which means asking hotels to buy from local farmers, from locally produced, products which are available at the local farms around the area. encouraging local entrepreneurs, encouraging people around the area who have some food business, encouraging their business to sort of use that as far as the hotel operations are concerned. That is two aspects, we call it B3 and B4. The other two is when it comes to environmental issues. So we talk about environmentally preferred purchasing, where we talk about traceability. Today, traceability of our food is becoming a big issue. You don't want Atlantic salmon being served in India, right? Because we know that that's not the right thing. So we talk about traceability in our standards to ensure that we are more reasonable in our transportation of food, and we go more and more towards local produce. And the fourth standard that I referred to has to do with waste. We talk about in that criteria how food waste should be measured. A system needs to be put in place to ensure that food waste is measured in all aspects of food in its entire production cycle, in a hotel. Now, all these criteria that I spoke about refers to all the SDGs that have been mapped to what Lorraine spoke about earlier, what Rubina spoke about earlier, the pledge. We refer to all of that, in our criteria and in the way we propagate it to people.
Thank you, Ram. Yes, the standards are very important to guide businesses for them to know what is actually sustainable. That's also a big question, to understand what defines sustainability in the sector. And now I will turn to Dada, Imelda Bakudo, for perhaps some insights of what more could be done on this topic at regional level, and perhaps from your perspective as well as an advisor to the COP28 on food and agriculture. Thank you, Dada.
Thank you very much, Elodie, and I hope you could hear me well. If you could just give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of the global policies that are impacting both tourism and agri-food system. First off, I am not with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN or FAO. I'm with the COP28 Food System team. And I'm also been very much involved with so many ASEAN groups, platforms, and initiatives and guidelines as an independent consultant on sustainable agriculture and climate smart agriculture. So I'm really coming from the agriculture, agri-food sector. And like the tourism sector, I can see our similarity in which agriculture, the same as tourism, is both a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions that creates climate change, and also a vast opportunity for transformation in order to offer opportunities to contribute towards lessening this greenhouse gas and adapting. So we seem to be both facing the same opportunities and challenges, which brings me to the core of what I wanted to share first. As part of the COP28 presidency of the UAE, I really wanted to bring forth this global policy, which I wouldn't want to call it myself as successful, but a lot of observers have been saying a very momentous occasion in climate governance when the COP28 Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food System, and Climate Action was signed by 159 heads of states. So this is possibly the strongest possible signal for accelerated action that shows that there's much needed transformation within the agri-food system to achieve the Paris goals and the SDGs. And this clearly impacts a lot. I was listening to the discussion earlier, and it was so good to hear a lot of the examples from Laos on food loss and waste and everywhere, which forms part of some of my work before on climate smart agriculture. Because because tourism, the same as agriculture, contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, but also offers opportunities to lessen it. So with this global policy, 159 countries, and within ASEAN, only 2 countries did not sign it, but almost all member states have signed this very high level declaration. So what does it mean? How will it impact us? Well, the declaration was really contains what we already know, that food and agriculture are impacted by climate change, but it also contains measures for consolidated and collaborative action. And I know that there's so many declarations that calls for the same thing, but this is really different in a way that it's signed by heads of state, because we know that food system and agriculture goes through so many multi-sectors, including tourism. And it's really not just collaboratively, but time is of the essence, looking for scaling up adaptation and mitigation measures. So this is one of the really, and we're really working with partners to implement some of the goals of this declaration. And tourism will be one of the key sector that will be partnering in order to implement this. Hence why we ask heads of states to sign this declaration, because then, you know, there's ministries of agriculture impacting food supply and food security, but tourism is its own ministries, health has its own ministries. And so, you know, it's very interdependent. And then there are various, and I'm very happy to hear about so many ASEAN frameworks and policy guidelines out there concerning tourism. But together with food security and food system, there's also very many that's coming out from the agriculture side. For example, ASEAN is coming out with the ASEAN carbon neutrality guidelines, which aims to lower emissions in three major sectors, in transportation, energy, and agriculture. And that really is all impacting tourism. Let me take a, and then there's also, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yes, and so agriculture will have its own subsector strategy within this overall sector. And I think that a lot of what you were saying as examples earlier will be called upon to be further scaled up. My favorite examples that really are, that we hope to find more support that impacts, and I've seen it piloted in tourism areas, are the use of black soldier flies, for example. Perfect example of circular economy, perfect example of avoidance of food loss and waste, perfect example of sustainability. So we hope that such practices that you have mentioned earlier and what I have also mentioned are then going to be elevated into ASEAN guidelines within the agriculture and food sector and can be utilized by the tourism sector. So that's my sharing for now, Elodie. Over back to you.
Thank you so much, Dada. And it's interesting how this very high level declaration will trickle down to all different economic sectors, and one such as tourism, which is an amalgamation of many sectors, as you pointed out. It will be interesting to see how that influences all the sectors. Thank you very much for that. And now I will ask the last question to Fernanda. More at what are the measures you think could support sustainable food practices of SMEs in the tourism sector? So another angle, the SMEs are often the champions of sustainability. I'm sure tourism is a sector where this is true as well. So what are the policies that can help them to continue to be the champions? And at the same time, I will encourage our audience to start thinking about their questions, because for once, I'm happy we'll have lots of time for Q&A, because everyone has been very good with time. So the floor is yours, Fernanda.
Thank you, Elodie, and thank you for having me. Yes, you're right. SMEs make up the vast majority of businesses in ASEAN, and that's also true for the tourism industry. They are essential drivers for economic growth and employment. And also tourism is one of the most important sectors for the ASEAN's economy. So this makes all the more important for greening the SMEs, for helping the region's path towards sustainable development. But greening smaller tourism businesses can be very difficult. Most SMEs, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, have been focusing on their survival, on having income, on maintaining their operations and paying for their staff. So they usually have a very short-term mindset. So increasing sustainability practices is still seen by many of them, many of these SMEs, as something complex and costly, of time, of resources, of money. So for this reason, it's important that we raise their awareness and show them that sustainability does actually lower expenses and operating costs in the long term. It brings a competitive advantage because we see that consumers and travelers as well are increasingly more aware of their impact on destinations, and they want to be more sustainable and have a positive impact and make more sustainable choices. So it also opens access for these businesses to new sources of finance and grants. And it complies with requirements from destination management companies, DMCs, and tour operators. So it opens access to also new markets and opportunities. So one of the most important measures to support food sustainability and tourism SMEs is to provide them with capacity building programs. These programs can be offered by government agencies, NGOs, industry associations, corporate initiatives, funding bodies, as well as international development projects. In the Sustainability and Research Department of PATA, my organization, we work on such projects, and one of them is called TourLink, that Zinaida showed in the few minutes ago. And I think it's a good example and a case study of how we support sustainable food practices of SMEs. So the TourLink project is focused only in Thailand and is a tourism supply chain initiative linking EU buyers to Thai tourism businesses. It aims to raise sustainability performances along the whole supply chain. And as the EU legislations on sustainable supply chain responsibility and the requirements and expectations of European tour operators towards destination management companies in Southeast Asia will only continue to grow, it is more important than ever for these suppliers of these DMCs, so the hotels, the resorts, transportation providers, and so on, to move towards greater sustainability. So this TourLink project unites the expertise of many partner organizations that work on sustainable tourism to achieve outputs in terms of green finance opportunities, carbon emissions reduction in tours, human rights and community-based tourism, as well as plastic and food waste reduction. So under the project, PATA developed standards for food circularity for tourism businesses. I will link the link later on the chat so you can have a look at it. This document is intended to be used not as a certification, but as a tool on the necessary checklist for reducing food waste. And these standards were developed following the principles of circular economy. So we address the 3 phases of usage of materials. So the pre-use, which we call the sourcing phase, use or the using phase, and post-use, which is the disposing phase. So the sourcing phase of the standard consists of a strategy called sustainable and optimized sourcing, and there are sub-strategies on that. The using phase includes strategies called responsible and optimized storage, responsible preparation and service, gas communication, and reusing. And then moving to the last phase, which is the disposing, we have strategies for redistribution of food surpluses, disposal of inedible food waste, and disposal of unavoidable food waste. So training programs and technical resources, such as the standards, help equip SMEs with knowledge and skills to innovate and implement more sustainable strategies. The training also provides them with opportunities to share their knowledge, challenges, and lessons learned with other SMEs. And this is important because, and I forgot to mention that we use these standards to implement in-person training in Thailand, in Phuket and Chiang Mai, with other project partners. So this training is important for because the businesses often have different stages of, they're in different stages of their sustainability journey, and they have different levels of experience. So it's important and helpful to bring them together to share challenges and lessons learned. So some of the ideas and solutions that came up during the project, for example, include sourcing locally, creating seasonal menus, farm-to-table initiatives, joining movements such as the slow food movement or 0 kilometer food, partnering with food surplus distribution organizations, such as the Scholars of Sustenance. I don't know if you're familiar with, I think they operate in Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Using food redistribution apps, creating composting sites, and many others. So, and another great way to encourage SMEs to implement sustainable and circular practices and innovation is to give them recognition for their efforts through certification and awards. And this is also something that we focus on in the Turling project. We launched last year the Waste Free Champion Award for showcasing and awarding best practices in the Thai tourism industry towards food waste reduction. And the winners that submitted the best practice received their award on stage and presented their initiatives to the audience to inspire other businesses. And the food waste winner, which was a hotel based in Bangkok, presented their strategies, and they included collaborating with the local farms to source organic and fresh ingredients and sourcing more frequently to reduce spoilage, creating a rooftop garden where food waste is used as a fertilizer, implementing a zero food waste cooking policy to maximize the use of all ingredients. And the last one is something that Imelda just mentioned, working with black soldier fly worms for decomposing organic waste. So this is a very good strategy. So yeah, this is some of the things that we can do to support SMEs in their journey towards food circularity. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernanda, for those thoughts on SMEs and the concrete examples, and also highlighting the challenges. I see the solution is often training, capacity building, and so that means also we have to, at every level, and I think you mentioned it as well, Ram, change mindset. It's important to change mindsets and all embrace a more sustainable consumption in our tourism. This was a very interesting panel, and now it's great because we have time for questions. And I will pass the floor back to our MC, our general moderator, Dr. Sirasa.
Thank you, Elodie. Well, I'd like to invite the floor to send in questions into the chat box, because so far the only question I see is from me. So please bring it in so that we can have a lively question Q&A discussion. For the first question that I sent in is to Rubina. During the panel discussion, you have mentioned that the whole team within the organization has a role in helping to reduce food waste. Can you please elaborate more on what are the specific roles of each person, each position, or each department that are involved within the whole holistic process?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So the question food waste actually has 95 criteria divided into 7 pillars, and each criteria has their own purpose. And the criteria ranges from raising awareness amongst the staff to monitoring the food waste, internal kitchen process, managing the waste that couldn't be prevented. So what I think Kunjan was saying about, providing it to surplus food by donating, or the canteen, and then turning it into animal feed or upcycling it. So there's so many different criteria that some of these criteria are directly linked to different departments. For example, with HR, are they providing enough sufficient training to the restaurant employees? Are they making sure that it's consistent? New onboarded employees are also trained. Finance, are they tracking the food cost percentage as well as the food cost per cover, which is actually our main KPI? With marketing, are they communicating this initiative internally, externally? Are they providing this communication with their diners so that their diners are also aware that, oh, leaving food waste on the plate is probably not a good idea at this restaurant? In a subtle, of course, not forceful way, top management? Are they encouraging and motivating their team, making sure that it is transparent and that no one's job is at risk regarding, you know, the amount of food waste that is being produced, because everyone is producing food waste at the moment. And then, of course, the kitchen and F&B team themselves, who have the majority of the criteria to comply with. So it does range quite massively, the criteria in the pledge on food waste, and it does break the silos. I had an opportunity to work with quite a few hotels and restaurants that did take the pledge, and we call it the Food Lovers Committee, and bringing them together and meeting them, it provided me with so many different perspectives on how food waste can be reduced. And it was truly very interesting, some of the creativity that was, you know, shared amongst the Food Lovers Committee. I think you're on mute.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much, Pravina. Is there any other speakers who would like to add on to this contribution as well? Imelda, would you like to speak on this topic as well? No, not yet. Okay. All right. So moving on to the next one. Thank you so much, Pravina. The next one, we have a question from Rito Brato. He said that he has been involved in tourism and heritage cluster development for a long time, and we very much appreciate if the best practices and learning can be replicated in Indian tourism cluster. So he was wondering if there's any platform or forum where the learning can be shared and discussed. I'd like to first start with perhaps Dr. Tony would like to talk about our ASEAN Circular Economy platform and the opportunity that your platform could assist in this, or perhaps can David as well?
Yes, go ahead, David.
Again, as an knowledge and information platform or portal or web portal, we are open to, you know, all kinds of knowledge, including good practices from, you know, this region and beyond. And we are more than happy to you know, work with different platforms on different level, including cross-sharing or integrating the knowledge database of our platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other speakers? Imelda, please go ahead.
The ASEAN Climate Resilience Network, which is a group of composed of the timing and the dogs.
We can hear you.
The dogs are on.
It's okay.
I'll come back, find another one.
All right, perhaps we can come back to Imelda after. Perhaps Imelda, you could also drop the names of the platform that our participants could share our best practices as well into the chat box so that we know. Is there any other speakers who would like to add on these questions?
So perhaps a very quick reference to the Switch Asia website, which we are going to put now in the chat, also would help, because in this case you would be having a possibility not only to find interesting cases, but also to get in touch with a lot of grant projects which are active within not only tourism sector, but also food sector itself, and get some inspiration there as well. So now Sarah is putting the reference as well. Thank you.
Yes, we do have some links now in the chat box. So Imelda, would we like to try again now?
The dog walker just came in. So ASEAN Climate Resilience Network is a platform composed of the 10 member states exchanging on best practices on climate smart agriculture, on resilient food system practices, and many of the approaches that you have mentioned earlier. So please, it's open to be utilized as a knowledge exchange platform. And most importantly, it might not be known, but there's actually the ASEAN Negotiating Group for Agriculture that goes to UNFCCC negotiation process to bring ASEAN issues jointly as a one unit and most effectively in this manner. And you can get in touch with these negotiating groups for agriculture if there are some policies that you wanted to be felt at the global level that will then trickle on to the regional level. It's called the ASEAN Negotiating Group for Agriculture, ANGA. And there are some support coming from FAO and GIZ to support these groups. Over to you, Sibras.
Thank you very much, Imelda. If you would be so kind to drop the links of the platform and the organization that you mentioned in the chat box, it would be very helpful for our participants. We have next question from our team leader, Sinaida, has asked about if our panelists know about or impressed about any technology or innovation in tourism that leads for tourism to have less impact regarding the food system in tourism. So these innovation could be innovation to reduce food waste, packaging waste, reduce carbon in transportation, or food production and processes and consumption. So if any panelist has any thoughts on this, please welcome.
In fact, Sirasa, if I may, not about not technological innovation, but really business innovation. So
some business innovation, okay,
in relations, in whether along the supply chain or with the community, which are beyond technology. This is the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sirasa, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
May I jump in? Oh,
yes,
sorry.
Of course. So let's have Ram go first and then Aline next. Thank you.
Okay, two things. I want to also address the question which was posed earlier by Rito Brato. He was looking for tourism and heritage cluster development specifically, from what I could see. All I can tell him is, one of the pillars of sustainability that we at GSTC talk about is culture, heritage and culture. So if you go to our website, you're likely to find a lot of examples, and the community there talks a lot about culture and heritage when it comes to tourism. That's just, one point as far as you're concerned. On the second question that, Zinalda sort of posed on, on foodways, any great example. So I was in Antalya. We had a global conference, a year and a half ago. And in Antalya, there's a large hotel that we stayed in. In the buffet that we all went to, the buffet was what they called a closed buffet, which means there was a glass in front of the buffet. Whatever you wanted, you gave your plate to the person serving you on the other side of the glass, and they served you food, and then you went along. So this is what they call a closed buffet. Apparently, it was introduced during COVID to prevent, contamination and all of that. But they kept it on post-COVID because they discovered that just this one small innovation resulted in about 30% reduction in food waste. Because, as a guest, you go give your plate, the cook there is serving you. It's very unlikely somebody will say, hey, come on, I want more food, right? They just serve you just enough. You can go back as many times as you want. This one thing has resulted in about 30% reduction in food waste, which I thought was brilliant, for a hotel to implement. You don't even need a glass. You just need to get people from the kitchen, once the buffet is served, to come and serve you. And what the hotel manager also told me was the cooks and the chefs are very happy about this, because once they finish one part of the cooking, they are just sitting down at the back of the house and smoking their cigarettes and drinking tea. Here they are suddenly interacting with guests, getting direct feedback. So that was like a social benefit they got. But from this particular discussion here, the food waste, the way they solved 30%, I thought was brilliant. So I just thought I must share that as a question that Zinalda asked.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Aline, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to add that it can be very helpful for small SMEs, but hotels, but also other businesses to sign up with certification bodies. Either it is a hotel certification body or a tour operator certification body, or with light blue regarding kitchen usage. It's just about having policies like very simple, just having very simple policies in place, like checking your suppliers and talk to the suppliers about how you like things to be delivered to the kitchen. And that, for example, yeah, how food should be delivered without plastic, etc., etc. Sorry, and Kumar already told a lot. I just wanted to add on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So is there anybody who would like to add on to these questions? Imelda, would you like to add? Yes, please.
I was inspired by Ram. I attended a workshop, a 3.5-day workshop in which there are secret students monitoring our food intake. And at the end of the workshop, they have reported on how much food was wasted. So I think this would be a good practice if some people wanted to, if some organizations wanted to do it. And within that same conference, there are recycled food option as well. Apart from vegan meat, there was a recycled food option, meaning it's a day old food that appeared on the table, and we were very welcome to take part of it. I wanted to address the question on the chat box, which asks, what makes the Asia Pacific region a fertile ground for circular business initiatives? And I think because we were, as Asians, we were brought up to not waste anything, right? Rice, for example, is very sacred in a lot of our culture, and that we were taught from childhood that we should not even throw rice away, but to consume it. And this is a good foundational, apart from our entrepreneurial spirit, in which you would see recycling is a business by nature within our culture. And I wanted to go to the example of a coconut tree when I was a kid in elementary school, where I was told to look at how the coconut tree, from its roots to its leaves, to its branches, to its lumber, are used in every which way. So I think that this region, Asia Pacific, culturally, intrinsically, has all the values of a circular business. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Imelda.
Can I just add to what Imelda just said?
Yes, please.
The other reason the Asia Pacific, market is booming when it comes to sustainability, like she rightly said, intrinsically, sustainability is built into the culture. And importantly, this region, the ASEAN region, is not stuck in a traditional tourism business model which only measures arrivals. Growth in tourism is more than just tourism arrivals. Growth in tourism is various other aspects which ASEAN is looking at now. So I think that is another reason why I think the ASEAN region is sort of doing well when it comes to, sustainable tourism. The uptake is tremendous. We are seeing it ourselves from GSTC. I've traveled more to ASEAN countries in the last 14 months than I've traveled to Europe. That itself shows, the sort of uptake when it comes to the ASEAN countries are concerned. Can I just address Lorraine's question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Lorraine was asking, about how are businesses being convinced to take part in certifications? First thing I want to tell, businesses is certification is an end, prize, if you want to look at it that way. But importantly, when it comes to SMEs and the tourism industry in general, I think to start on the journey towards sustainability is the most important part of it. Certification will come later. And to get to certification, there are so many steps, an organization needs to go through. It's not as simple as it sounds. It's not like entering for an awards. You fill a form and either you get the award or you don't get the award. There's third-party audit involved for it all to be truly, international and global. That is one part of it. The other part of it is when people decide to go in for certification, they realize the business benefits. Today, I say sustainability makes business sense. Not surely from a cost-saving perspective, which is obvious. I think everybody talks about that from a sustainability perspective, but the market access and the market demand for it. Today, we have OTAs like bookings.com, google.com, American Express Global Travel, and all of them giving preference to hotels who are sustainability certified. So it's making business sense today beyond the cost saving. There's market access opportunities. So all these reasons is why today there is a very strong business case, Lorraine, for people wanting to get themselves certified and moving forward in this journey.
May I add to that point?
Yes, please.
Ram is completely right. You have to get started, and you can't necessarily know how the adoptions of new innovations or business models or frameworks will help or support you if you don't already know your existing situation, how much waste you have already been creating, what your carbon footprint is. So to get started, from Light Blue perspective, we think it's so important to start monitoring. And earlier I was saying about the Hayats that the 50-60 Hayats that we adopted in 2023, where they rescued over 600,000 kilos of food waste. That we calculated according to their cost of food waste per kilo was equivalent to 3.2 million USDs. So using these figures and these data, it's very easy for us to actually convince our clients or prospects to join us because waste is equivalent to money, because we only call waste when we can't do anything with it. But actually, once we push the boundaries, that waste isn't necessarily waste. For example, we have so many people in the waste industry now that are turning it into biofuel, upcycling it into cleaning products, turning it into animal feed, making sure that the surplus food is actually being distributed correctly. So just to, remember, I think that waste is equal to money, and to actually monitor what is already existing, like what your carbon footprint is, what your current waste situation is before you even try and tackle your waste.
Thank you very much, Rubina. That's right. We need to reimagine our waste as a resource and not just waste, right? So we don't lose the economic value of waste. Now, our time is running out. We have time for one last question from our team leader. And she asked, what is your experience of engaging with tour operators in the area of sustainability? And are they still relevant? If yes, for which markets? Who would like to start? Ram?
Yeah, sure. So we've engaged a lot with a lot of tour operators in the ASEAN region. Remembering that a lot of the ASEAN region is very conducive to cruise tourism, for example. A lot of the cruise operators now are beginning to respond to the crazy criticism against them, rightfully in some extent, on the kind of climate change impacts that they are having. So the cruise tourism is becoming extremely sensitive to what's happening in their industry. So when they come on shore, they are looking at tour operators who are, strictly adhering to sustainability principles, practices, and processes. So we've had quite a few tour operators who approached us and are getting certified by the GSTC system because the demands are being made of them in one such sector, as I'm saying, the cruise industry. So lots of this, while governments are also, forcing people to become more sustainable, it's the market demand that will eventually rule the roost. And tour operators are beginning to respond to it. And that's been our experience. And we worked with several tour operators, in their journey towards it.
Thank you very much, Ram. And before we conclude today, I'd like to re-invite our chair, Dr. Anthony and Kun David, back on the floor for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Sirasa. Very rich. I've been taking notes. I'd just like to summarize briefly. I think today's session, for me personally, has been quite refreshing because for once we've been talking about consumption, a dialogue on consumption, in addition to production. So I think that's been especially regional consumption. And I think when you talked about, one of our speakers talked about regional food in Luang Prabang. and the importance of food waste data management, Rubina, I think where, when, and why. And I think the whole issue of metrics, I think, is very important for all of us. Whatever we do as a group, grouping together, whether it's the best practice or government supporting companies in the hospitality industry, I think metrics is extremely important. As well as what I have noted here from Jan, the transformation of the community. I think in your four pillars was extremely important in how we go through this process, you know, with the community and advocating for that transformation of community. And obviously, without this, without a global unification framework, all of this would not be possible. Without a global policy, this would not be possible. And in the implementation phase, you know, the capacity building that is provided by governments, NGOs, and private sector, as you discussed, Pata, you discussed your tooling, which regarding pre-use, use, and post-use. I think all of these are essential. At the end, how do we scale up? I think you discussed this quite clearly. How do we scale up from your best practices, you know, and how do we use a whole team process? So I think in the first instance, you know, in a short-term frame, I think in order to scale up, the challenges are how to challenge as far as a private sector and tourism industry and hotels. I would just start to say, challenge your colleagues, you know, challenge your colleagues and friends within your, for example, hospitality industry to do as you do, and using this whole team process, and let finance division lead this. And I think in the last 20 minutes, we began discussing about Asian values. And I think this is extremely important because what is it in ASEAN? What is it in our cultural heritage? What is it in our values? And I think, Rubina, you said that you talked about, you know, no waste, talked about the coconut tree, and it took me to my childhood, you know, I used to, I didn't do it myself, but I had, you know, adults, you know, we make coconut branches, we turn them into horses and swords and sticks and things and to play with. I think we have to promote this cultural heritage that we within ASEAN also cherish our values of no waste. You know, I used to be quite under pressure when I went to my Indonesian neighbor, you know, because in their house, not a single grain of rice had to be left on the plate. And I think this can promote, you know, our values as we do as we grow our business. But all of this, I think, where do the international organizations, the governments, channels, has to support the hospitality industry in their promotion of that. As a first step, I'd like to turn to David to explain a little bit of how the ASEAN Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform can support you in your first initial steps and how we can move on this together within our platform. So David, on to you, and thank you very much for this really, I think, you know, very fruitful discussion.
It's also for possible, you know, a collaboration amongst, you know, many of the existing platforms. You know, please feel free to if you see that it would be beneficial for mutually benefit for, you know, both of our platform to we can, you know, discuss and seek for, you know, possible synergy among, you know, different platforms. And of course, you can always visit our platform if you have something to share in terms of different types of knowledge. But again, on institutional level, you can, organizational level, you can collab with us, with our platform. Please feel free to reach out to us. Such a fruitful discussion, 2 thumbs up, nothing to add. But before we say goodbye, allow me to take this opportunity to extend my humble invitation to you, particularly Thailand and ASEAN mainland countries-based colleagues, to join our upcoming forum, the ASEAN Action Towards Circular Economy move forward with extended producer responsibility on 28th of March in Bangkok, Thailand. Join us in Bangkok and experience Thai food and travel destination. For more information, please check out the link in the chat box. Lastly, please stay tuned to our upcoming webinar series and activities. Have a fantastic day. ขอบคุณครับ Over to you, Dr. Sirasa ครับ
Thank you very much, Dr. Tony and Kun David. Before we get going, I just like to humbly thank you, everyone, all participant who has been participating all throughout from the beginning and until now, our panelists, our moderator, and especially our chair for making this event happen. And as Kun David said, please keep an eye out on your email for our promotion of our next webinar, webinar number 4 in the series. So I look forward to seeing you guys next month. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.